All right, so in this video, we're going to take our robot into Unity. So go up to New Project, and we're just going to do a 3D Core project. I'm just going to name my project here Robot, and that's just going to be the generic name. I'm going to go ahead and click the Create Project button, but I'm also going to pause the video to so you don't have to sit through the loading process. So our project is currently loading in Unity, and what I'd like to do actually is I'd like to export this off as an FBX. So I'm just going to go to File, Export, and then FBX here. Something I like to do is turn on Apply Transform, and what this will do is apply all the transform settings in here. If you remember, we zeroed them out before, and I'm just going to save this in that robot folder as before and just export my FBX. All right, here we are back in Unity. I'm going to right click and create a new folder and just name it PC for playable character. Ideally, you would do maybe a folder called models, and I'll drag that PC in there. And then within that models folder, you'd create another folder called characters. So since this is a playable character, hence PC, I'm going to go ahead and just do import new asset. And in my D folder, I'm going to go to that robot folder. See if I can find that for a moment. Or I'm sorry, not my D folder, my documents folder rather. I think I saved it in here. And I'm just going to grab my robot and all of these corresponding textures and hit import. So if we select our robot here, and in our inspector, you can see there's model, rig, animate, materials. If we turn it to use external material legacy and we hit apply, what you'll notice is it'll open this materials folder and it'll actually create a little material for you here with the texture. So now you can see I have my texture, my character here. If I drag it into the scene and I press F to focus, you can see it applied that texture for me. Now, if you don't do that material legacy, what essentially happens is if you use the embedded material and you hit apply, you'll see that it's going to prompt you for a material there. So you can either create a material, or if you expand this, you'll see there's one here and you drag that onto your model. And if we drag that one into the scene, you'll see you'll get a similar result. So I like to use the other method because I use different digital content creation tools. So here's our model. It's inside of Unity. I'd like to create a prefab out of this. So inside of the assets folder, I right click and I go to create folder and I name this prefabs like that. And I will, inside the prefabs folder, create another folder and just call that PC. And I'll drag my robot inside of there. Now I would like to create an original prefab, and I'm actually going to rename this file inside. This is the prefab robot, robot underscore prefab here. And I'm going to delete this one out of the scene and drag this one in. And you can see it's there. Let's go ahead and create another folder. I generally use the underscore when I want things at the top of the list. So I'm going to do underscore scripts here. And what I mean by top of the list is I have my interface sort of in a different way. So I'm going to go to default here and I'm going to do 2x3. And so that sort of stacks these. And I generally pull from my project up into my hierarchy. So I'm going to dock this below and let's do this. Now, notice when I made that underscore, it moved it to the top of this project list. Another thing I generally do is I just use one column because I'm oftentimes working on a laptop. Right now I'm on my desktop, but just in general. All right, so a little bit of housekeeping. Another thing I do is I like to use Pro Builder, which is actually created by a previous student of mine, which is pretty exciting. But so go to Window and then go to Package Manager. And if you don't see it, you want to go to Unity Registry and you want to look for Pro Builder under P like Peter, and here it is. And I'm just going to hit install. And I'll pause it while it installs that. All right, now that it's finished installing, I'm going to go ahead and close this. And you'll see here we have Tools, Pro Builder, and here's all of these different options that relate to Pro Builder, which we'll get to in a second. Let's talk a little bit about the interface. So up here is our scene view. This is sort of where you build out your scene or your environment. I'm holding the Alt key and the left mouse button to rotate. To zoom in and out, I generally use the wheel. And then to pan, I just click that wheel in. If I'd like to focus on a character, I can left click that, or a camera, I can select it, or I can select it from my hierarchy and I can hit F like Frank to focus. Down here is our game view, and that correlates to this camera here. So you can see I move that in and out like that. And any of the properties that deal with any of these components in the hierarchy, or these game objects rather, the main camera, which is a game object, the prefab that we created earlier. Now, what a prefab does, I should have explained this a little bit more in detail, is it's a collection of individual components joined together. That's what a prefab is. So when I look at my models here, this character is just the mesh, right? And even though it has some other elements to it like animation, rig, or materials, it's not necessarily game ready or game usable. It's not the most optimal way. So with a prefab, I can go in here and I can add components like, for example, a rigid body if I want to do physics. And it'll add that property. So let's go ahead and I'll show you what that means. I'll go ahead and hit a 3D objects plane. I'll drop this below and I will hit Control P to play it. And what you'll notice is with that rigid body, my character falls. Now, if my character had collision on it, so let's add a box collider here, and I press play, you can see that these different components, which is my box collider and my rigid body, they stack up to this prefab here, right? Now with these added, if I want to keep these settings, I can go to overrides and I can hit apply all. And now my robot prefab here has been updated with those components. Overall, I think that's pretty good for now. What we'll do in the next video is we'll start to script out the actual well, you know what we'll do is we'll use ProBuilder to build an environment for this robot character to move around in.